All right, hi everyone. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. We have a couple seats. There's one open seat up here if anyone wants to sit down. And there should be some stools around. And those of you standing, thank you for standing. I'm going to talk about tarot tonight, like Dave said. This talk actually started as a bar camp talk last year, which is pretty fun. So if you were at bar camp, it's not the same deck, but it's the same design. So lucky you. Let's get started. But before we get started, I forgot I have this. Before we get started, I want to give a shout out to Grace Duong. She is the creator of Mystic Mondays, which is the tarot deck that we're going to be referencing throughout the night. She also created a nifty app that you can download. It's free. It's also called Mystic Mondays. And tonight we're actually going to be doing a kind of more of a workshop because I'm a little sick, and because learn by doing. And it'll be really helpful if you have the app downloaded to your phone. It's free. If you're comfortable downloading it, that'd be great. Otherwise, I'm going to be splitting out my deck. Please don't break my cards. And you can have some tactile learning too. And I use a lot of her art and writing in this, so shout out to Grace. She's from Philly and gives readings at T-Mums every so often. So before we talk about Philly, or before we talk about tarot, let's talk about what people think about tarot. There are a lot of different misconceptions. I think the most common one is that it's a tool that people use to scam you out of money by telling you like when you're gonna die or if you're gonna win $1 million. If you go and see psychics and get value out of that, that's really awesome. That's not how I practice tarot, so that's not what we're going to be talking about. We also see oftentimes in media representation that tarot is a tool that Disney villains use to trick you into like selling your soul into becoming a frog. This is my favorite Disney movie, and not because it has tarot in it, but it was kind of fun. And people also seem to think that in order to read tarot, it means that you have a gift, or reading tarot is like you have to like be pagan in order to read tarot, and that it's like a curse or gonna do bad things to your spirit. That's also not the way that I practice tarot. The way that I practice it is more about personal development, and I try to approach it as more of a thought experiment, and so that's the lens that we're going to be talking about today. So also kind of just on the topic of like having gifts, tarot, I have found for myself that tarot itself is a gift, and it brings it's taught me a lot of skills for personal development, but also in my career, which is what I would like to share with you. So here's a better representation of what I think tarot is. It is a part of my personal spiritual practice. It's a very fun thing to do at parties, especially if you like only know someone from like hanging out twice and you give a reading and it's very intense. It's a good way to bond. And like I mentioned, a thought experiment and a way to reconsider different things that you're working through. Some other gifts that I have gotten from tarot, like I mentioned, reframing, also identifying connections between ideas, images, thoughts, patterns, all those kinds of things. Critical thinking, empathy, and then of course creativity. I meant to write it down on here, but I actually bought a book recently that is called The Creative Tarot, and I don't remember the author, but it's all about using tarot to like do creative writing. I'm not a creative writer, but I thought the concept was so cool that I had to have the book, and I haven't started it, but I flipped through it. It's really cool. So how tarot works. How many of you are familiar with how tarot works or like have ever done it? Awesome, cool. So first and foremost, Tarot itself is content. You can think of it as just like a massive content project or a big website with 78 pages. The pages themselves are the cards, and each reading tells its own story, but the deck itself tells a story as well. And it's the story of the Fool's journey to enlightenment, and all of the different people that she meets and the experiences that she has along the way. Each tarot deck has 78 cards, like I mentioned. There are 22 major arcana, which represent the main steps in the Fool's journey, and then the rest are the minor arcana, which belong to 4 suits or houses, which are wands, cups, swords, and pentacles, or coins, what you'll find. And then within each suit, there are 14 pip and court cards. So whereas in a normal deck of cards, we have 13 cards per deck, or per suit, in tarot, you get a bonus. It's pretty fun. The cards themselves also have a bit of structure. So like I said, tarot itself is content, but the card can be a piece of content as well, and each field within that card is a piece of content. So there's always the title, which is the kind of card that, or the actual specific card that it is. You might not always see it on the card itself, like here it's above. This is a screenshot from the app. It represents the placement in the deck, so whether it's a major or minor arcana, and if it's in the minor arcana, where it is between 1 and 10, and then page, knight, queen, and king. There's always an image. It usually conveys the meaning. In this one, in this deck, it's a little bit more interpretive. I've also seen others that are like really interpretive, or they're like 10 of cups, here's 10 cups, and like that's all they give you, and you're like, okay. But fortunately, usually tarot decks come with a guidebook, and those actually tell you the meaning of the card. And one thing that I really like is that even though the structure of each deck is the same, sometimes the interpretations can be a little different. There are some decks that look at tarot through like an anti-colonialism lens, and they don't have kings or queens in them. There are others that tend to play more with gender, so the representations are a little different in the cards. And there are even some that are more about like connecting to nature, so those don't even have any people in them at all, which is pretty cool. There's also a form of tarot, practicing tarot, where you develop some intuition and you basically memorize the cards and you memorize what they mean. For some people that means figuring out what that means to them individually, and for others it means memorizing kind of like the more textbook traditional meaning. In a reading itself, generally this is the process. So you start with a question, whether that's you having a question, doing a reading for yourself, or someone giving you a reading, or if you're giving a reading to someone else, asking them to have a question. You don't want it to be yes or no. Like, you don't want it to be, am I gonna die next week? Because it's probably gonna say yes, and then you're like, like, that's not useful, right? But it's like, what can I do to make the best of the next week is like a better way to ask a question. The more open-ended you are, the better. And really it helps if you think about like the role that you can play in a situation. So there are sometimes people will do readings that are more global. So like, what's the state of the world today? And like they're trying to just better understand like how they feel about the state of the world. And those are more about feeling, and you can also think about action. So like, what's the state of the world today, and like what can I do to make it the world that I want it to be? So questions are, it's kind of fun. Like, it's a fun way to think about it, and they don't always have to be so serious too. You can also do like, what are the strengths that I have? What do I value about my friends? How can I celebrate my partner more? Questions like that are great too. Then you have a spread, which is basically the layout or template for your reading. There are classic spreads. The most famous one is the Celtic cross, or 3-card draws, which are things like past, present, future, and I'll show you these in a second. But basically each, just like if we're talking about a template for like a blog post, each position in the layout or in the spread is a field where the card will go, and so that's where that information plugs into. See the connection? So when you're looking at doing a reading, it's really useful to find a spread that kind of speaks to what you're trying to get an answer for. So if you're doing, if you're asking like, what can I celebrate about my friends? Doing like a really intense like Celtic cross reading, which is getting into like your subconscious, like could be useful, but it might be better to do more of a relationship-based spread. And one thing that is really fun that I didn't include in this deck, but I did in my bar camp deck, is that Pinterest is like a gold mine for really creative, out there layouts and spreads, and it's really fun to kind of look up like job search spread or like caring for my pet spread, and like you'll just like find the weirdest things, and it's really fun. And then you have the cards themselves. So once you know how you're going to lay them out, that's when you pull them. There are a lot of different ways that you can do it, and really I kind of want to just leave it up to you, so I'm not going to try to like guide you in one way or another. But you can spread them out, you can throw them up in the air and like catch as many as you can. You can shuffle them and just pull them through. You can cut and pull from the top. It's really about like finding what works best for you. And then you pull the cards, you set them down into the places that they are, and then you go from there and you read. So I'm gonna talk a little bit more about spreads, just because they are really important, especially because we're talking about structure. So this is very tiny, and I didn't expect it to be this small, so I'm really sorry. But each of these is a different spread. So on the left side, we have 3 different 3-card spreads, and you have past, present, future. That one's not telling you like, okay, here's exactly what happened in your past, and here's exactly what's going to happen next. It's more about interpreting kind of like context and what might be the consequences of what you're thinking of doing. We have a relationship one, so you, the relationship, and the other person, which is a really interesting way of looking at like, okay, I got this card and it says that I'm really clingy, but I actually feel like I really need a lot of space. Like, even though the card didn't totally apply to you because it's telling you that something that you know you aren't, now you know you have a little bit more clarity that you need a little bit of space. And then the last one is mind, body, spirit. And another way of thinking about that is, if any of you know about cognitive behavioral therapy, this is really similar. So thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, and the relationship between all of those. So in the group exercises, we use this one, so that's one that I wanted to talk about, just because I think sometimes people tend to take that one a little bit more literally. On the left is the Celtic cross spread, and that's my favorite one for like if I'm really, really struggling with something, if I'm having a really hard time making a decision, or on the right, left and right, you know. If I'm really having a hard time making a decision, or I just want reassurance, like it's kind of like I just want someone to tell me it'll be okay, even if like I don't actually believe that the cards are predicting my future. Sometimes if it tells me like it's gonna be okay, it feels good. And if it tells me it's not gonna be okay, then it's like, oh, I was right. Or it's like, no, everything's gonna be okay. And then like, either way, right? Like you feel a little bit more reinforced in what you're feeling. So this one's really intense. It's 10 cards, which as we go through these exercises, you'll see quite a bit of reading and quite a bit of processing. But it looks at both like your internal feelings and also external influences. Which I think is really a great way to think about really big challenges, because it kind of helps get you out of your own head and out of your own way of thinking. So that is Celtic Cross, and these are spreads. And then, like I mentioned, within the practice of tarot, there are a lot of different ways of learning and of creating like a true practice for yourself. The one that I do most is a daily draw. I do it most because it's daily, but it's when you pull one card, and sometimes people will do it and do it more so that they have like a concept that they can kind of meditate on throughout the day, or oh, I want to keep an eye out for this theme that I'm noticing is happening in my life, or oh, I pulled this card and it is making me really think of my friend, maybe I should call them. It's just kind of like a daily reminder of something to think about. And if you downloaded the app, you're in luck because it has a daily draw feature and it randomly pulls a card for you every day. So you don't even have to buy a tarot deck to do it. The next way is to study the cards, which like, I'm a learn by doing kind of person, but if you have the book, you can literally like through the book and memorize everything too. There are also really intense websites and YouTube videos, as there are for everything, but they're really intense for tarot. If you want to like learn about like the planets that are associated with each card, or if you want to learn more about reversals, which is when you pull a card and it's upside down, like what does that mean for you? Is that bad? Is that more to reflect on? Do you agree with it? And so learning the cards does make it easier to kind of recall what they mean, and to interpret it. So I have some go-tos that like through my daily draws, I just sort of started to memorize, and also ones that like I got once and was like, I hate this, and then I remembered it forever because it's awful. Who wants to guess what I'm talking about? Cassie? No? This is the Three of Swords, for those of you who know. See, once you do it, you know. And then also learning by doing through reading for yourself or for others. I found, like I mentioned in the beginning, that doing readings for other people is a really cool way to bond with them. It's also an interesting way of like looking at how people think. And I tend to like literally read what's in the book so that I'm not trying to sway people one way or another. And after I read each card, I say like, what do you think about that? And then like try not to like give your opinion first, because it helps them process better if you're gonna start doing readings for other people. Sometimes people say that it's like bad luck to read for yourself, but like it's like that's like the value in it, I think. And then also, you know, like by having the structure of the spreads and of the actual practice of doing a reading, it brings you a little bit of clarity. So these are like the most common ways of practicing tarot, whether it's like as part of a ritual or kind of a one-off. If you're like really feeling down, or like I said, if you're at a party, stand by. But you can also do whatever you want, which is my favorite part. So like I said, the structure is really helpful, but there is value in breaking the rules sometimes too. I am a huge fan of like standards and documentation and style guides and rules, but every so often you gotta break some rules, right? Like, no, AP, I want to use an Oxford comma, thank you. I'm just gonna do it. Sorry. Except I actually made that a rule, so helps to write the rules. But you really can do what you want, and in some of these exercises, we'll practice that too, so that we're really working through kind of like both exploring the structure, but also not necessarily feeling like totally bound to it. So let's do this for real. I have 4 exercises. I'm going to walk us through one of them together. It's time for some crowd participation. There are sticky notes around. There's a couple of pens somewhere. I don't know where. Keep an eye out. I hope you got an email saying to bring paper and pen to you. So if you don't need sticky notes if you brought something. Or you can grab some sticky notes. You got some sticky notes? Cool. Cool. So I'm gonna ask you if you're comfortable to come and use the mic if you have some ideas. We're gonna do an exercise where we all work for a D2C luggage company called Sia, and we've been charged with a personalization campaign where we have three different groups that we're targeting, and we want to write 3 different ads, banner ads that are going to display on the web, and we're going to make sure that those ads are targeted to those people, basically. Make sure that what we say and the art direction in the ad, basically all of the information, which is content. Content isn't just words, it's information. Making sure that all of the information is what it needs to be. Something that I always try to share is that I don't believe in personas. So even though we have target audiences, we're not gonna write for like young kids or like Stacy who goes to La Cologne. Shout out Colleen. She gave a talk about how personas are terrible, and it was great. Instead, we're going to talk about behaviors and motivations instead of demographics, because people are not their demographics. Their backgrounds inform them, but ultimately their behaviors and motivations are what we want to think about. At least while we're doing this. You don't have to agree with me, but this is the ones we're going to use. So for Sia, we already have set up a structure for our banner ads. We make a lot of them. These are our 3 target audiences, and this is just one campaign, but we make a lot of banner ads. So we decided to use some structure so that we don't have to make up a new one every time. So in our banner ad, we are always going to use the Sia logo. We have a few different versions, but you can choose whichever one you want. That one actually doesn't matter in this, but it's there. We're always going to have a hero image. So for those of you who, I spoke to some of you beforehand who kind of just like made your way in here, and that's amazing. Thank you so much for coming. If you don't work in design or marketing, a hero image is just like the big picture in an ad. So we're going to think about the hero image and what we might want to use there. What the headline is going to be, and because this is a banner ad, we're just using a headline. We're not doing a ton of body copy, so keep it snappy. And then a call to action. So what are we going to use to like actually get people to click to learn more about Sia? So a little bit more about Sia is that they have so our luggage includes a removable battery so that you can charge your phone. It already comes with packing cubes. If any of you haven't used packing cubes before, about to change your life. Do it, it's great. We do free shipping anywhere in the world. It's super customizable, so various colors. We even do hand-painted monograms. You might know like what Sia is, but it's fine. There are locks that are TSA compliant, so your stuff can be safe without breaking the law. The carry-on size is $250, and then you can also add a matching backpack that you can strap right onto the luggage handle for only $85. The features of that don't matter so much. So we're going to go through 3 different personas, starting with the 2 of Wands, and we're going to put together our banner ad. So I'm going to go back to the structure. If you want to write it down on one of your sticky notes so that you can remember. I think I have it again later, but it's worth writing it down. So once again, the logo, the hero image, a headline, and a call to action.
What are our pixel dimensions?
What are our pixel dimensions? That is not totally relevant right here, but a great question. That's a great question. We're currently just gathering assets. We're just putting info together. What about numerology?
It might be important.
It might be. It's not tonight, but it could be later. It's a good thing to think about. All right, everybody got this? It'll come back, so cool. All right, so for the 2 of Wands, this is the description of our target customer. A new world is calling your name, and you are confidently stepping forward, ready to see what's next. However, you're faced with leaving your comfort zone to venture into unfamiliar territory. Take the risk and have a backup plan. So I'm gonna give everybody a couple minutes. I'll give you 1 minute to, because I want to like get through it so that we can do the group exercises so you can meet up, So take a minute and write down a little bit of art direction, even if it's like a few words, what your headline might be, and your call to action. Those are the biggest ones that we need. Anybody in the back need me to read the description again? Okay. If you do, just raise your hand. Okay, who has one that they want to share? You can share like, if you have like art direction that you're really proud of, or you have a headline that you're really proud of, you don't have to share like the whole thing. I just want to hear some of them. Come on up, Marta. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Hey y'all, how's it going?
Hi.
So I came up with See the World. I really liked the uncharted territory and going out and seeing things, so I just thought 3 simple words, See the World, was part of this theme.
Cool. Thank you.
Yay! Okay. I have art direction.
Ariel or Ariel?
Ariel. Okay. Okay, so the idea of being really brave and adventurous, but also needing to be prepared, made me think of a family who wants to go have amazing adventures, but wants to make sure that everyone is cared for while they're traveling. So for art direction, I wanted a picture of a family somewhere outside of their normal comfort zone, but all together in sort of like a adventurous but / safe sort of experience.
Thank you. All right, one more. Enjoy.
Hi, I'm Joy, and I'm a data scientist, so this is totally not my world, so be gentle. But I was thinking, I really want to sell that $85 backpack, and the thing for me is like, you don't want to like have your checked bag go with all your underwear. So I was thinking like artistically a nice shot of in the airport in a really expensive city like Tokyo, like just the price tag and a pair of sexy underwear, just being like, you know, it would be really nice if you had the underwear in your $85 backpack so you don't have to buy the expensive airport underwear.
All right, so I'm going to share what I put together. So for the hero image, it's a person in the airport using the battery to charge their phone because they want like a little bit of stability, but they're going on an adventure. This is like kind of cliche. I did this afternoon. I'm very sick. I don't know if you noticed. Your next adventure is calling. Are you ready to answer? Because they're using their phone, right? And then explore with Sia is the call to action. How are we feeling about this exercise? We have a couple more. Cool. So our next target audience is the Emperor. He embodies structure and stability, complete with decisive action to easily manifest ideas. His accomplishments and wise words are based on his worldly experience, and he's got the battle scars to prove it. The Emperor is a strategic thinker and urges you to carry out plans systematically and in a controlled manner. And I'm going to give you 1 minute. Dave, could you close the door? Thanks. Anybody need me to read the description?
Yes, please.
Cool. So the Emperor, he embodies structure and stability, complete with decisive action to easily manifest ideas. His accomplishments and wise words are based on his worldly experience, and he's got the battle scars to prove it. The Emperor is a strategic thinker and urges you to carry out plans systematically and in a controlled manner. All right, 10. Who's got something to share?
I decided on the hero image being passport pages with Visa stamps to show the experience. Been a worldly traveler. And the headline is "Choose luggage as road tested as you are." Did not come up with a CTA.
Thank you. Anybody else?
So I'm thinking for the art, it's probably the packing boxes feature you want to highlight. So maybe the open suitcase with the packing boxes with each like beautifully like everything's like perfectly like segmented, and then like your tagline is something like everything in its right place. So they're really good at that control thing. I think the emperor wants.
Thank you. All right, one more. Yeah. I'm used to this.
I have no like images in my brain right now. It definitely needs some copywriting love, but it's something around the notion of I think when you go to the airport and you see people who like have their shit together and they just like walk with a purpose. So I was like picturing that was the emperor, and it was something around the lines of like looking like you have your shit together, even if it's like it might all be chaos behind the scenes, but like you look like you have your shit together.
Love it.
But you can't say shit in the banner ads. I don't know.
Yeah, this is
You can do it.
Cool, thank you. Thanks everyone for sharing. So what I came up with is a person sits on top of their luggage, struggling to get it to zip up. Everything is clearly shoved in last minute. Never sit to zip again. Free packing cubes with all purchases. Call to action, pack with a plan. Because I just had that experience and it sucked. And then our last target audience is the Princess of Cups. This deck calls it Princess. If you're familiar with other decks, it's the Page of Cups. So she asks you to be open-minded about new experiences, emotions, and how messages can take form. Pay attention to synchronistic events and symbols in dreams, for it is your guide delivering you a message. Express yourself freely, as open and innocent as a curious child. Any questions? All right, 1 minute. Once I get this going, it's gonna go. You can go before I do. Okay, officially go. If anybody needs me to reread, just raise your hand and I'll reread. Stop. Who wants to share? And I don't know you. What's your name? Pam. Nice to meet you.
So I see like a woman who's on like an adventure, and so the hero image would be her standing there looking out to the ocean or on top of a mountain or something, and it would say, see ya, see you.
Thank you. Who's next? Colleen?
Alright, so for art direction, I'm picturing like a woman with like a perfectly unoffending smile, and then the headline is just, I am group A asshole. I am group A asshole.
I like that. one more person who wants to share. I would love someone new, someone I don't know. I know you can go. I know you too. You'll all have more opportunities to share too, because it's that kind of presentation.
So I thought about express yourself freely, so I thought the art could be somebody with a really unique sense of personal style. They're at the airport in like a really trendy outfit and their luggage like matches them because it's fully customizable. And then I didn't think of the CTA for that yet, but that was the art and theme of what I thought of.
Thank you. Thank you all for sharing. So what I came up with is along the similar lines, customized suitcase with hand-painted monogram and matching backpack, because I too really want to sell that backpack. Express yourself in style with custom colors and personal touches, kind of trying to tap into like the mystical, like Reiki kind of thing. And then browse options. I was thinking of doing like peruse options, because I was thinking this person wouldn't really browse. Like I feel like she would peruse more than she would browse. But I didn't want to alienate like anybody who might have been like mistargeted and see that. So browse options. There you go. Now it's your turn to do it on your own. So I'm going to be handing out some tarot cheat sheets. We just read through that like each tarot card has a really long description, but often they also have themes that come with them. I mentioned reversals, which is if you get a card upside down. So this cheat sheet has the themes for both like right side up and reversed. So as we go through this, I want to encourage you to use whichever one works best. So this room isn't totally set up for how I was hoping it would be, but it's perfect for this. But let's try to get into 3 different groups, maybe 6. We'll see how I feel. There are quite a few people. If you can start coming back to your seats, we're gonna take a few minutes to share, and then we'll do Q&A, and then we'll have a little bit more time to mingle. Come on in. All right, so I asked you all to nominate a scribe, but I didn't ask you to nominate a speaker, which I should have done. But who feels like they are like really strong in their answer? Like, who wants to go first, basically? Which group? All right, what group are you in?
The one that was over there.
Okay. Great. So I'm going to read their prompts briefly, and then we'll have you come up, introduce yourself, and tell us a little bit more about your answer. Cool. So this group was the design systems group. So they're on a team with designers and developers, as you should be if you're working on a design system. Really hope you are. Working to better define how and when to use different components. In this case, the tarot cards that they have are the components themselves. So they're working through the documentation process, and the team, which is the designers and the developers, has shared that they sometimes have trouble knowing which components to use, especially because they share similar design or code patterns. How many of you have like been in this situation before where people are like, do I use this model or that model, or like this button or that button, right? It's like pretty common. So we're gonna see how they handled it. So their task, they had specific cards, and their task was to identify the patterns in those cards, where do they overlap, and what makes them different from one another. So I'm going to have you come up and share, and please tell us who you are.
Sorry to interrupt.
Oh,
no,
we're good. We're
Okay.
going okay.
Well, no.
Hi, I'm Jessica.
Hi, Jessica.
I represent the team in the front. That's our name. So with the cards that we were given, we noticed that in terms of the overall patterns, we identified that there was a lot of, there were circular components, it was familial, there was warmth, harmony. There seemed to be expressions of the dichotomy of work and home and family relationships, and duality. And so those are the overall patterns that we found. We're talking about the collection. And then what we saw as unique, we broke them up into the three components. The first was, is it up there? No, okay. The first is the sun. And so we thought that the sun would represent basically the relationship with a container, anything that would have a relationship building aspect to it, whether it was in the footer, communicative, CTA, that sort of thing. So that's how we would identify those components from the sun. T of cups, number 2, and, sorry? T of cups. Sorry.
It's your interpretation.
Wait a minute. Let's put on those glasses. Sorry, 10 of cups makes a lot more sense in the universe of tarot. So, right, with the 10 of cups, what we saw was that this was where you would do the storytelling. This was where you'd have the purpose, the meat of the copy. And then in number 3, Queen of Pentacles, this is where we wanted to, this is where you'd see the tone. We wanted to say that it's like anything you want to come back to, anything that feels like home, setting the tone. Because the structure is all the same, that's how you would differentiate between those 3 components.
Thank you so much. If you can stay here for 1 second. Can you tell us like a little bit about how your group felt like doing this experience, or doing this exercise? Like, what were some of the biggest challenges that you had, and what did you learn?
I heard that it was a little bit challenging because it was sort of abstract, and that it sort of had to force you into this specific mode of thinking. I don't know if anybody has anything else to add to that, but I think that was pretty much what we were thinking.
Thank you. All right, who wants to go next? We have brand voice and UX writing or storytelling.
Go. Yeah.
Hello?
Middle group.
What group are you?
Middle.
Brand
voice.
Okay,
The middle.
cool. Come on up. Tell us who you are, and I'm gonna read. Oh, I'm gonna read your thing first, and then yeah. Okay. So you're a group of brand and UX writers defining the brand voice for a bank's voice assistant. The company has a reputation for being a little stuffy, and they're trying to shift their image to better align with what their customers expect from a bank. You have some market research to go off of, which indicates that your target customers want their bank to be confident, friendly, and helpful. And you also did some user research in this. Doubling up, love it. I wrote this. And it revealed that your customers are actually like really uncomfortable sharing their personal information aloud, even if they're only talking to a voice assistant. So this group pulled 5 cards randomly from the tech, and they looked at how the concepts might relate to the brand voice and chose the 3 that fit best, and then they defined the brand voice. And did you get to the bonus?
We started talking about it,
Okay.
and I didn't confer with my group for this, but I have an idea.
Okay, and so the bonus was to write a possible response to a customer who just said, "I don't really want to say my social out loud."
Okay. So, we picked, I'm Amanda Renzulli of Barcamp, an M. And so with our group, we pulled the 10 of Wands, the King of Wands, the 9 of Pentacles twice, and the 9 of Cups. So we ended up choosing the 10 of Wands, which represents duty, responsibility, and security, which bank, great. People want their bank to be responsible and secure and stable. We selected the 9 of Pentacles, which represents vitality and showing your true colors, and kind of success, I think. And then the 9 of Cups, which is about wish fulfillment. So our thinking for the brand voice was the kind of the overarching statement that we came up with was our duty is to fulfill your wishes. And we are helping you as a bank, we're helping you be responsible now so that you can get return on your investments and fulfill your wishes later. We wanted to express the kind of true colors and clarity and vitality, trying to be relatable and saying we know banking is confusing, but we aim to be clear, straightforward, transparent, and we kind of wanted our brand voice, I think, was it Yoav? Our friend here, he had to leave. The gentleman that was sitting there.
Had a great meme.
He had a great meme that he showed us of I would say it was like about a 4-year-old kid on the phone with his hand on his head in frustration. He's like, "Grandma, you just push settings, then Wi-Fi," and basically the kid was talking his grandmother how to do something on her phone, and so we kind of turned that on its head a little bit, reversed it maybe, and we said our kind of brand voice, or even our AI chat lady could be named Terry, T-A-R-I, from tarot. She wears a lot of jewels and jewel tones, and she is a no-nonsense grandma / rich great aunt. Maybe she doesn't have kids. Maybe she kept all of her money. Either way, she's our AI voice, and so that's kind of as far. I wrote apparently talk to the bank grandma, but we were thinking of how would she respond if you're like, Terry, I don't want to tell you my social, and I thought she could either say like, tell it to me in code, honey, and like you could say it maybe in letters or in like some other type of code, and that she could use her algorithm to translate your code. Sure.
And how did your group feel about this exercise? Like, does anybody want to come up and...
Anyone else from the group feel good? I thought it was fun.
Did you learn anything about tarot or content?
Yes.
Yay.
The cards we picked really aligned very well with what a bank brand voice might be.
Yeah.
But it kind of highlighted how you can interpret them in ways that match your purpose.
Context.
The question you're asking.
Context.
Love it.
Cool.
Thank you. All right, we got one more group, and then we'll get to Q&A, and if we have a little bit more time, a little bit more mingling. Who from the storytelling group would like to come and tell us your story? While you decide, I'm going to read their prompt. So this group works for a mindfulness app company, and they're gearing up to launch a lifetime paid subscription. And they are working on an informative landing page explaining the change. The lifetime subscription includes extra features to help customers build habits that improve their lives. This group has decided to start creating the landing page with a story. This is a technique that I use called story framing. I said wireframe in the thing, but I think you can look it up. I'm certain that I didn't make this up myself, so it has to be somewhere. But they're story framing instead of wireframing, and they want to try 2 different techniques. So they pulled 3 cards, and they got 2 of the 3 card spreads that I shared before, past, present, future, and mind, body, spirit. And their challenge was to write the story that guides their landing page's content. And try to keep it kind of short. So I would love to hear who you are and a little bit more about it. Well, we would love to hear who you are.
Okay, well, you were totally right that our group was way too big, but we loved each other, so we didn't want to break up. So we got to the mind, body, spirit draw. 3 different people drew 3 different cards from the deck at random. And we got also the 10 of Wands, which was very odd that somebody else got that. That was upright. We got a reversal of the world, which is the major arcana card, and we got the High Priestess. So mind was the 10 of Wands, the world was body, and High Priestess was spirit, which we really liked. When we looked up the story parts for these cards, it really did fall in line, don't you guys think? For this particular thing because it's a mindfulness app and they're trying to get people to buy the app for a lifetime subscription. It's usually a lot more than the monthly subscription, and we're making a landing page. So the story that the one spread that we did get to, the mind, body, spirit. So the mind for the 10 of Wands, we came up with unburden yourself and you're not in this alone. I know, hard. The world, so we looked up both because it came up in a reversal. So we looked up the regular definitions and then the reversal. And one of the things I find about the reversals, they really help you define the problem that you're trying to address in your product. The upsides are like the solution to your problem, whereas like, you know, the needs are in the reversals. So always look up those reversals, kids. Even if you didn't draw it. So the wholeness and unity for body would be the upside, right? The upside right. And take action to make things happen is a reversal. Your goals are taking too long, but don't give up. We also thought that was pretty good for a mindfulness app for a lifetime subscription, something that you want to commit to changing your whole life. And then for spirit, we got the high priestess.
Yeah.
And she says her inner voice, serenity, everything's inside you. So you don't need to look elsewhere. You have your own expanding intuition. But for poops and giggles, we looked up the reversal. And it says imbalance, second guessing, and you're too busy for wisdom, too much stuff. And it says get in touch with your higher self for the reversal.
All right.
Yeah, because there was a little controversy of whether or not the card came out in reversal, so that's why we looked it up. but anyway, so that mind, body, spirit for the 10 of Wands, he's the guy that's unburdening himself. What the body is looking for is don't give up on your goals, even if they're taking too long. And the spirit is you have everything inside you, you're not too busy. So that's as much as we got.
Cool. That's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for sharing and participating. How do you feel about the experience as a big group?
I liked it.
You good? Good? Great. Are y'all gonna do a little bit more of this when you get home or at work tomorrow?
I'm gonna go buy a deck.
Love it. Yeah, you wanna go buy a deck? I'm gonna put together some resources that we'll send out on Meetup either tomorrow or by the end of the week. So I'll include some of my favorite decks in there too. I don't get kickbacks or anything, I love them. Okay, cool. So we have a few minutes for Q&A. If anybody has any kind of lingering questions, please ask me either about tarot or content strategy or anything. I'm not an esoteric expert on tarot, so I might not know the answers, but some of us are. So if you know an answer that I don't, I would love to hear it too.
Can you explain a little how tarot is different than personas?
How is tarot different than personas? Yes. So this is all going to be my personal opinion, and I really don't like personas. Sorry.
I hate personas.
Oh, great, cool.
Yeah, for sure.
User researcher, so I didn't know. So for me, generally when I think of personas, they really are based more on demographics, whether that's zip code or income or ethnicity or age or whatever. And like I said before, those things do give us kind of an idea of who you might be, but my lovely partner Ariel here, we are both white, we're both 28, we both work in tech and design, we both live in the same house in the same zip code, but we are very different people and our behaviors and motivations are extremely different. So you can't rely on demographics alone. And even if you're looking even larger at people in this income bracket tend to care about these things, maybe, you don't actually know. And so I like using tarot cards to explore, if I have kind of a target audience or a segment kind of like given to me. I try to use the tarot cards to better understand, like, okay, yeah, like I know that this group like is really traditional and like old, and they love like watching TV and like probably don't use their phones very much. Like, okay, but like what do they actually care about? And so I like looking through the deck and finding like the Ten of Swords, who's someone who had like a really meaningful career. And so like, okay, if my segment is mostly retirees, and like what if they did have a meaningful career and now they don't have that anymore? Like, is that why they're watching TV a lot? Is that why they don't like use their phone? Because they don't really know how, because they worked in a more traditional field. So I tend to use it more like that, to like be like, okay, yeah, I have like the basic information about the segment or the persona, but I want to know a bit more about like who these people could be.
Do you pull cards to like learn more about?
Sorry,
Yeah.
my mouth is very dry. Yeah, so sometimes I will pull random ones, but it's usually more about like getting to know the archetypes within them. Tarot generally draws on Jungian archetypes, so do personas, so they work pretty well together in that sense.
Can you talk a little bit more about how you use the app? As someone who's really hasn't done their own tarot cards, opening the app today and getting a card, I was like, oh, it's just describing me. Like, can you kind of talk about that?
Sure, yeah. So the question was talk a little bit more about how I use the app. So for me, I use it primarily for the daily draw. And I take a screenshot actually and save it to very organized folders on my camera roll because content's strategy. So in like the day, I usually do it in the morning. Sometimes it'll be like the evening and I'll be like, oh crap, I forgot. But I try to like look through it and read it and be like, okay, this definitely reminds myself of me. It's talking about like having to make a really big decision and I don't really want to do it, and like, yeah, I see where that fits. And one thing that I like about Mystic Mondays specifically, there are tons of daily draw apps. This isn't the only one that you can use, and you can use like a normal deck to do it too. But the thing that I like about Mystic Mondays and the way that Grace has written the book is that she tries to like infuse little bits of advice in the descriptions without being like, you have to sell your house, like you have to quit your job and move to Paris. Like it's more about like, okay, you do have this decision to make and you don't want to make it. Like, here are some things that you can consider. So if I feel like I really relate to it, that's what I do. If I feel like I really don't, like if it's saying something like you just lost like everything in your life and everything is terrible, like I don't feel that way right now. And so sometimes I'll think of like, does this remind me of someone that I know? And like, does that make me feel like maybe I should give someone a phone call? Or does that make me does that like give me feelings about politics or about like society? And what can I do about those feelings? Or like, what are the things that might have been contributing to how I feel about it? I use a lot of that like cognitive behavioral lens on it. So that's really kind of the biggest thing. It's also very useful as like to just sort of like look up the cards and learn them if you don't want or need a deck, because it has a library of them. You can search all of the cards and their reversals.
So specifically with the daily draw, do you find yourself asking a question as you sort of narrate it, or do you just sort of like do it?
I don't.
Okay.
The question was, do you ask a question with the daily draw? I don't. Some people do. Some people have like the same question every day, which is like, what can I learn about myself, or what's a word to meditate on, or whatever. Some people have different ones. I feel like I've even seen like those tear-off calendars that are like question of the day, and like people will use those. It's really kind of whatever you want it to be because it's your practice.
How do you like avoid or balance applying it to like other people or like other types of people. Like I think like applying abstract attribute. Well, sorry, I'll end the question there.
So how do I avoid essentially confirmation bias in my readings? It's really hard. Like generally I kind of don't. I more try to see it and call it out. And for those of you who don't know Dave very well, Dave has a really great talk about Dave has a great life about cognitive bias, but has also a great talk about confirmation that touches on confirmation bias. And one thing that I've learned from Dave is that when you become aware of your biases, it doesn't make them go away. Like you're still biased. So at least like being aware of it, and when I do readings specifically, or if I'm doing it for like using it for work, I'll try to say like I said before, like I'll try to ask people, what does this make you feel? And then sometimes if I like feel really strongly like, I know exactly what's going on in your life, like I can see where this is connecting and you aren't seeing it, I'll say like, I see a strong link, like do you want to hear it? And sometimes people will say no, like I want it to be my interpretation. With work, it's more like I ask like, if the opposite of this were true, like if I had gotten the exact opposite, not necessarily the reversal, like would I have accepted that answer, basically. People often think like, I need to have a gift, I need to be super, super well versed in this. I don't believe that. I think some people do, and they take it very seriously, and that's okay for them. You don't need to be that person. If it's a gift that you want to offer to someone, like you should do it. So the way to get started generally is the way that I always do it, and it's the way that I've been, teaching you all here tonight, is to really say like, hey, I want to understand your understanding of tarot, and maybe like what might be like making you afraid to do this or uncomfortable. And then say, here's how I look at it. So here's the lens through which I'm going to be working with you today. So if you have a different lens than I do, and you're like, no, I absolutely am predicting your future, like that's okay. You just got to tell them, right? Like this is the lens through which I'm looking, and you can receive this message how you want. I think that's the gift of tarot, is really giving people the chance to receive it how they want, rather than trying to like really kind of push it all into being a specific thing. And that also helps you, because if it's not a super specific thing, then like how could you be a fake? Like how could you be wrong about it if it's not? If there's no right answer, like how could you be wrong? Yeah. Anything else? Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for coming. I really appreciate you being here and working together. We don't have the space anymore, but the bar is open till midnight or 2. Have fun. They have late night happy hours, so if you really want to stay, you can. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it. If you wandered in or learned about this outside of Meetup, we would love for you to join us. It's Content Strategy Philly on Meetup. And we hope to see you next month. Thanks so much.
Thank you.